The problems facing New Zealand's primary sector have been mounting at a rapid pace. So I think it's time for open hearts and open minds. Welcome to Serious Country to kick off your week, the very latest in farming, food and fibre right here in paradise in New Zealand. If you've chosen to join us for the first time, thank you so much for taking the time to step into Serious Country. I'm very privileged for you to have taken the time to join us as a part of the community that's the most passionate around the food we produce and consume here in New Zealand, Monday through Thursday from 7 o'clock. We welcome you all to the table, where we hear what is unfolding day to day in our largest export earner and vital to our economy's future. It's all about having you and your say, and don't we love to be heard as humans? So I'd love to hear in the comments below anything, any questions for our guests, any comments on anything that you hear along the way. You know, there might be something that's really grinding your gears at the moment and you want to get off your chest, but also something that could be enlightening and positive that's happening in our rural communities around New Zealand. Comment below, and of course, why don't you give us a wee waving emoji just so I know that you're there with us live throughout the show. Even a little thumbs up. I'm your host, Sarah Perium, and looking forward to kicking off this week. It's so special that we've created a really big family around this show, you know, watching along every night, or some people just dropping in and out on the nights that they can. And of course, taking us with you on podcast on demand. It's certainly a very growing thing. Human connection, you know, it's so important to our actual survival. You know, we're not actually made to self-isolate. A thing that farmers and growers have become very used to, being out on their own every day. But at the same time, you know, it's actually a world of good to get off the farm and out of work, and I'm an absolute shocker for it as well. I love working in the weekends. You get so much done. But at the same time, you know, like I took this weekend to go and hug the baby that was born over lockdown, and go and hug the friend who lost his brother over lockdown. And even hug my best mate who asked me to be her bridesmaid in the weekend. You know, these things are so important for us, this sense of human connection. I've been kicking myself the whole weekend of everything I didn't get done in the weekend. But you know what? I think it's time to reflect on the return on investment of investing in our friendships as well. Because, I mean, we certainly have been through a hell of a time, and it's great to be able to get out. I know a lot of you around the country would have done that through the mai and have that glow of camaraderie from the weekend. But also, there'll be a lot of people right now that have a glow on because of the rain that we got overnight. Shivers, wasn't it great? At home, on the peninsula here in Canterbury, 16 mils. And I know there's been some great numbers, but nothing that's going to be a real drought breaker. But it is super worth celebrating. We absolutely love doing series R rain gauge around the country. So you know the drill. In the comments below, how much did you have overnight? How much moisture hit the ground and hopefully sunk in? I'm looking forward to, after 7:20, heading to Hawke's Bay. My sort of drought commentator to me on the side is senior sheep and beef analyst Mel Croad with AgriHQ. And so it'd be good to find out what sort of, liquid was in that rain gauge there. But we're talking to her about the certain lift in the US beef prices, which is certainly not positive in the long run, an indicator of potential volatility still to come. Why aren't our New Zealand farmers feeling those prices rise in their back pockets here at home? Now, with this caucus reshuffle today, from new National Party leader Todd Muller, long-term MP for Hamilton East and chair of the Primary Production Select Committee, David Bennett, has been given the title of spokesman for agriculture from, of course, Todd Muller. So, of course, I want to know, and I'm sure you will too, who is David Bennett? What is he going to bring to our sector? And what is his views on a lot of these issues? In Bovis, fresh water policy, drought funding, etc. So I'd love to hear your questions, and I'll put them to David Bennett after 7:30. And towards the end of the show, we're going to CEO of Potatoes New Zealand. I really enjoy having a yarn to this man. He's a very intelligent young man, Chris Claridge. Now, there's been a lot of news today around the dumping of international fries on our shores. And what is this going to be for a long-term effect on our own food security? As I'm hearing now, New Zealand potato growers are not that keen to put in as much in the ground because of the volatility of that particular market. But where does that leave us with our trade agreements and our trade positioning with our free trade and obviously the rise of globalization? So we'll be catching up with Chris towards the end of the show. But to kick off the absolute news of the day, lamb shanks have been voted the favourite cut by New Zealanders. It's official. This is following National Lamb Day yesterday, Sunday, the 24th of May. Joel, I know you love a good piece of meat, and particularly lamb. What's your favourite dish?
My favourite lamb dish?
Your favourite lamb dish?
Probably the one that we had tonight.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, that was pretty good from the famous grouse in Lincoln. Good. It was lovely.
Good on you. You know about brand placement, don't you?
Yeah, just a wee bit.
Just going to dig in there for the grouse. Grouse is a good feed. For those of you who may have attended the fine establishment of Lincoln University, will know the famous grouse very, very well. And we found out a wee trick about ordering food delivered from the grouse over lockdown. But a good feed is shanks. So we're going to be joined by Beef and Lamb New Zealand Platinum Ambassador Chef Michael Coughlin after this very awesome on-farm story from one of my very favourite human beings from Taihape. But to be honest, they're all good human beings in Taihape. It is a fine lamb farmer, Māori Whittle. This is Sarah's Country.
I remember Dad saying his generation, every person would have a second connection to a farmer. So they would genuinely know what rural life was. It's so easy to live in this little bubble where we think that everyone understands rural life, but I think there's a huge lack of understanding of what happens in rural New Zealand. It is telling the story, but it's getting them to want to listen to the story. So how do you get people that don't even know anything about farming to want to know? I think it would be nice if we could somehow show that. I'm Māori Whittle, sheep and beef farmer in Mauwhanga, Taihape. In July last year I came home to our family farm and I'm leasing 600 hectares off my parents. I bought the stocks, I bought 4,000 ewes, 1,500 hoggets and I bought 80 breeder cows. I'm the fourth generation on this farm here. Dad's sort of been pretty clear that he's wanted to get off for a while now. He was 65 and still worked on here by himself, so it's nice to actually give him a break. Literally 2 years ago I knew very little, like I didn't even have farm dogs. Learning how to break in a dog, stock work, tractor work, fencing, I had to learn like everything. Some people I don't think realise how much I didn't know. It's amazing how much I've learnt by coming home and taking on all the responsibility I have. It's sort of amplified the learning curve. I was lucky enough to work for some really good people that have supported me and basically shown me I can give it a crack myself, and yeah, here I am. I'm still pretty green to it, so I don't want to make too many changes too soon. It's been farmed the way it has for the last 30 years because that's what's worked. There are long, hard days, but I always just remind myself of what I am doing and how much I want to be here, so it sort of overweighs that. So no, it's all box of fluffies at the moment. You never really feel very remote. There's not many days that I won't chat to a friend or quite into my bit of Snapchat and even put a bit of stuff on Instagram, just because there will be times I've spent a whole day by myself out on the farm and there's some awesome views. Quite a good way to keep connected, I think. The perception thing comes back to me, but I just sort of think it's a little bit hurtful that how people react to what we're trying to do. Everything we do has a reason and it's to the benefit of our stock, so it would be really nice to help people understand that. We need to be doing more than just backlashing. Maybe try work with them and try and understand where their perceptions are coming from. because if everyone's attacking each other, that doesn't really get us anywhere, and we really want everyone to be on the same page. It would be cool to bring them out, just even show them your relationship with your dogs, some of my pet animals I still have on, just everything we do to care for our stock and how happy they are out here really. We portray that clean green image, but it literally is sheep clean green in the hills.
Well, the 24th of May every year here in New Zealand, because, I know that there's a lot of people that are watching Serious Country around the world. Kiwis know this day very well, in particular rural Kiwis. It marks a day in 1882, the very first frozen shipment of our lamb left New Zealand shores. We have certainly come a long way from Britain's back paddock, sending over and selling our frozen carcasses in Hessian sacks and marketing, auctioning them off on top of apple boxes in markets in London. Now, this month, marketed to 1.3 million Instagram followers on a internationally renowned chef's Instagram page. We certainly have come a long way to showcase New Zealand lamb at an absolute premium. Our next guest knows a thing or two about presenting lamb for sale. He's a beef and lamb platinum ambassador chef, Michael Coughlin, based in Dunedin. Welcome to Sarah's Country. I'm very, very excited to have you on the show, Michael, because I know that we both share an affinity to a very, very special place in New Zealand.
Yeah, well, thank you, Sarah. And yes, we do.
And that is Central Otago, of course, where I met Michael. We've done some filming over the years in his time up in Central. Now you're in Dunedin, back in Dunedin, and can you just give us a bit of an understanding first about your sort of chef history and career leading to this, and what your role is for Beef and Lamb as a chef ambassador?
Yeah, well, I've been a chef for 38 years. I started off in the army up in Waiouru there when I was actually just a cadet in the army, and basically that's been my career right throughout. Over those years, I owned a number of restaurants, opened up a number of restaurants and within hotels. And during that time, I've had this real passion for red meat. Worked and done a lot with beef and lamb, also venison for that as well. And over the last few years, I did quite a bit of work as a consultant with Silverfern Farm, working with Celia Merino and various other cuts, development of certain beef cuts as well. So I could sort of feel my career starting to make a little bit of a side turn. And of course, over the years, I've done a great deal of work as a consultant with Beef and Lamb New Zealand and being an ambassador, and then being given this title of Platinum Ambassador. Basically, it's sort of a nice way of saying we're just going to put you out into pastures here and allow some of the young ones to come through. But still, it's great to be able to meet up with these young chefs to help mentor them and just share ideas, Been on the floor a long time, and you gain a lot of skill and knowledge in that time. It's nice to be able to pass it on. But over the last couple of years, I've actually moved out of the kitchen and now working as a brand ambassador and taking care of all the sales and marketing for the Crushley family, who have got a sheep station in the Maniatoto at Kyburn Diggings, or at Kyburn, and I've been selling this lamb up and down the country to chefs. It's special lamb. Basically, the lambs are raised on regenerative pastures, and that's a great story to be able to bring to chefs up and down the country.
I've got a lot of questions for you, Michael, but firstly, before we get into the important fundamentals when to arming chefs with that story, I firstly just want to focus on the news of the day. Lamb Shanks has taken it out. Now, back when when I was a child, I remember my father saying, how on earth are these people thinking that they can get money for selling shanks? All they're good for is the dogs. And now merino lamb shanks that our dogs got the pleasure of are just absolutely, pride and place on restaurant menus around this country. You've seen a
Yeah,
lot of
you wouldn't.
shift.
Yeah, you wouldn't be feeding the dogs anymore, not at the price that they're commanding. And look, I'm really thrilled today when Lisa from New Zealand Beef and Lamb sort of, contacted me and said, the lamb shanks are taking it out because over the last couple of years, my responsibility now is to sell the whole sheep to chefs, broken down into pieces. And the problem we've got here is that chefs want to use the shank, they want, the French rack, they want to use the strip loin, they want to use the rump, and they only equate to, a French rack's about 5% of the weight of a clean carcass. So all of those, what I regard as second tier cuts like the leg and the shoulder and the shank and the belly, are proving a little bit harder. So, but I think times are changing, and I think especially with this lockdown and restaurants being stifled a little bit with being able to trade, they're revisiting and re-looking at these kind of cuts to see whether they can actually get better yields, get better returns. Protein on a plate doesn't have to be incredibly expensive. You can actually do an incredibly satisfying meal with these cheaper proteins.
So back to the question before there around the shift of the story that a chef or a waitress can sell over the fundamentals of it tasting amazing. Have you seen that shift in balance of what these processors and meat marketers need to provide to the food service industry over your time as a chef?
I think that, as I said, I think the education process on these using these other cuts is a really important part. And I think as we go on in time, one of the things with the lamb shank especially is that it's very linear in its use. You either braise it until it's falling off the bone and serve it with a different series of sauces. But there are different things that you can do to it. And it's just a matter of getting the younger generation of chefs starting to step back a little bit and look at it and think, how can I recreate this? Because they're so good at doing that with everything else that they do in their restaurants and in their kitchens.
And how do we be able to tell the story that not all lamb is equal?
One of the things, and this is what engaged me with meeting up with David originally 3 years ago when I first started working for the farm, was the story about the farming process. We're all sort of very familiar with the fact that our cattle and our lambs are raised on grass, but to me, I just sort of felt like we needed more of a story. Being able to pinpoint and have that traceability back to the farm is an incredibly important thing. We have this new wave of chefs there that are going out. It's very trendy now to sort of go out and to forage and to spend more time with your producers, talking to the producers. And I thought in my time as a chef in the kitchen that I had a very good relationship with my producers and my suppliers, but not to the degree that I think the younger chefs now demand and command. And therefore, I think the story has got to be very, very thorough. You've got to be able to dig down deep and be able to not so much prove the claims, but be able to make those claims readily available. And that's about, as I said, we're so used to the producers sort of saying, it's grass fed, and that's great. We all produce and we all raise on grass, but that narrative is changing now. Is how are we treating our grass? How are we looking after the soil? And I think that part of the story added back to the produce and being able to try. And I know with the lamb that I'm selling, I get really excited being able to pass this on to chefs because I know the eating quality, the marbling, and the texture of this, along with the breeding and David's hand selection of these animals, makes a huge difference to the eating experience.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. It's Beef and Lamb's Platinum Ambassador Chef, Michael Coughlin, who always enjoy catching up with, an extremely experienced man when it comes to the marketing of our finest premium red meat from New Zealand around the world. I just wanted to just touch base on that, is that I'm really looking forward to the day that we can understand things like appellation and tewa, and being able to brand our meat, our beef, our lamb in a way that we do our wine. We certainly do not have a shortage of marketing talent in this country, and it's an absolute opportunity that's sitting there at our fingertips. So let's get on with it. Now, coming up on Serious Country, the rise in US beef prices, we do have to be wary of. Mel Croad, Senior Sheep and Beef Analyst from AgriHQ, is going to join us to talk about the volatility behind these high prices.
This is Serious Country.
Everyone's been talking about food these days.
While we've been busy stacking shelves, there's a whole team behind us.
But it's hard work too.
And we don't grow it without help.
Nutritious food needs nutrients. Our soil tells us that story.
By testing, we know what the soil needs.
We make the nutrients right here in New Zealand.
And we've got it
when you need it.
And we get it to where it needs to go.
As farmers, we have a really important role in turning sunshine and water and nutrients into an edible product, and we don't take that lightly.
It's great to know we're putting food on the New Zealand dinner table.
So we can all come together.
We've got to play our part in keeping the farmers growing what they grow, whether it be grass or fruit and vegetables.
Pleased to be part of the production line that keeps the industry moving and keeps people being fed.
I have been speaking to a farmer and they appreciate what we're doing.
They're really happy that at this critical time of the year for their autumn applications, our stores and supply networks have stayed open.
You're proud and privileged to be part of the team.
Thanks for the hard work, team. Let's dig in. And let's do it all again tomorrow. Cheers.
Don't you love that when your earpiece falls out? I just wanted to acknowledge all of the wonderful rain millimetres that are coming in. What a fabulous rain. But of course, as we know, with anything weather, it's certainly not fair and even and equal. Great comments coming in. Suze Bremner said only 3 mils. I'm so sorry for your loss, Suze. Mark Warren, though, at Waipari had 20 mils. Mark, I know that you would be enjoying that. And that it's not so much about the mils, is it? It's about that soil temperature to be able to have a little last kick into the winter. And Kylie said 26 mils in Taupo. As I was saying earlier, 16 mils here on the Banks Peninsula. And may it continue. That's a bit more moisture behind those clouds coming up through the country. Now, caught up earlier today with Mel Croad, sheep and beef analyst here in Hawke's Bay. But we're talking about how the prices are looking in the US. Make sure, if you're really interested in following closer your livestock insight reports, you can subscribe to the wonderful team at AgriHQ do some incredible market analysis. And the other thing that we need to tell you about is a fantastic product that AgriHQ it is called, that the team are doing in terms of breaking down the markets both here at home and internationally around the world. So go to farmersweekly.co.nz and check out the new podcast, AgriHQ NA. Now here's Mel Croad. Well, manufacturing beef prices in the US have risen, and it's driven by disruptions in the US cattle production system. We're joined now by AgriHQ Senior Sheep and Beef Analyst Mel Croad. Now, Mel, the US beef market is fundamentally a key market for New Zealand. Can you give us a bit of an update on what's happening there as the cattle ranchers in the States are managing their way through the disruptions via COVID?
Yeah, hi Sarah. Absolutely. Last month we saw processing plants, a lot of processing plants in the US actually having to close purely because of the fast spread of infection rates of COVID-19 through staff and workers there. Now, since then we've seen the adoption of, I guess, a bit like what we saw here in New Zealand, the physical distancing of staff at processing plants. So what that means now is the plants are now all open again, but of course throughput is a lot slower than pre-COVID-19 days. Best case, they're running at about 75% capacity, so a really good improvement on early May where capacity at these plants was more like 60%. So they're adding about another 100,000 head to weekly kill rates. But look, despite these efficiencies, it's going to take a very long time to work through the backlogs of cattle in the US. There's reports that there could be over 1 million cattle on feedlots that should have been processed over that April-May period. So it's going to be some time before we start to see these plants operating back at 100% efficiencies. And some are saying it will take months, if not towards the end of the year, which will just still have quite an impact on those cattle supplies and throughput.
So this price has really risen since record highs achieved in November for US's imported beef market. That's great for New Zealand.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're seeing is that the US domestic beef prices have basically responded to the lower production in the last month or so. And the closure of the food service actually enabled some of those consumers to spend more at retail on beef. So we didn't really see a drop in demand as such in the US, but what we did see was that break in production and supply. So I guess those backlogs, because of the plant closures, have kind of created this false sense of a beef shortage in the US. So there's been this really big scramble to secure product at retail in the lead up to peak US beef demand. And I guess that's where the US imported beef prices have been thrown a bit of a lifeline, because the US domestic prices have lifted so much that there's been quite a considerable discount imported has been trading at. So we've seen those imported beef prices really start to ramp up, and look, they've lifted by over 30 cents a pound in the last 3 weeks, which is good at our end, but yeah, we are just a little bit cautious at the speed at which these prices are lifting.
So what sort of flow-on effect is it happening here for our bull price, and are farmers sort of seeing that in their back pocket?
They're starting to. When we see in-market prices lift, we generally see a lift at the farm gate. It's not always immediate. Processors and exporters need to be confident that they've got a good supply of cattle in front of them. But to be fair, bull beef farmers across the country know this market inside and out. And they're really quick to question when things look to be a little out of whack. And I guess right now that's probably what they are seeing. On one hand, we've got a soaring market. On the other, we've got very low farm gate prices. And I guess meeting in the middle is this historically low procurement competition that we're seeing amongst processors. So yes, right now that lift in those imported beef prices has been so strong that when you convert it back to New Zealand dollar returns, they're up there with the record returns set last November when China and the US were slugging it out. So yeah, there is some concern at the farm gate that we haven't seen prices lift as fast as we should have, given the really strong upside in those imported beef prices. But I think that's got to be measured by the fact that when prices lift so fast, it also lifts the volatility. And we have seen some improvement in farm gate prices, particularly in the North Island, just with kill becoming a little bit more current. But look, we're navigating really unsettled times and have been for the last 8 weeks. So we've just got to be careful that demand we're currently seeing in the US market is sustainable.
So the months ahead, what does it look like in your crystal ball, Mel?
Yeah, like I said, we've got to make sure that demand is sustainable in the US. If it was being driven by an actual physical shortage of cattle and tighter production, then yes, that would absolutely be a tick for higher beef prices. But we've also got to be mindful that while China's in the wings in terms of beef demand for New Zealand, they're not paying the prices we're currently seeing in that US market. So I guess, if we were to look at the season from here on in, we would start to see domestic kill rates drop off as the last of those cull cows are offloaded. And with that peak kill period behind us, it would mean that our exposure to overseas markets is limited and reduced. And so, like I said, the markets are mixed, but we've got to see more than just the US market showing any upside, particularly given the period we've just come through. And if we looked at pricing graphs, they would suggest upside through to spring. It's what every farmer is used to. But like I say, we've got to see more activity on our global markets than just the tight supply situation in the US to really encourage that stronger pricing position at the farm gate.
Mel, lastly, of course, I have to ask you about that moisture overnight, and I'm sure you'd like to see more of it. How was it at your place?
Yeah, look, Sarah, we were really fortunate. We tipped out 20 mils this morning out of the gauge. We haven't had that sort of rainfall in one hit for a number of months now. So excitement levels were fairly high, and we've had a little bit more rain through the day. But, yeah, unfortunately, it just keeps coming in. It's so isolated. I know farmers around us and further north towards Hastings haven't had anywhere near that amount. So, yeah, we're still all looking to the sky. We definitely need to see more rain to get those feed levels away in the pasture still growing before it gets too cold, that's for sure.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I always enjoy our monthly catch-ups. It's Mel Croad, the Senior Sheep and Beef Analyst for AgriHQ. Great to hear it's that 20 mils at Mel's place in Hawke's Bay there. Now, coming up on Ceres Country, we're going to be joined by the new spokesman for agriculture for the National Party after Todd Muller's announcement of his caucus reshuffle. It is Hamilton East's MP, David Bennett.
This is Ceres Country.
Now, Joel, just before we go to our next guest, your enjoyment of New Zealand, I take very, very deeply and seriously here. And of course, you had a wee job to do down in Dunedin on Friday. Dunedin's a big part of my heart. We had Michael Coughlin there talking to us from Dunedin. How did you get on? I know you're a bird man.
Yeah, I mean, seeing albatross for the first time was pretty incredible. That's been on my list for a while, so that was good. Yeah. And little penguins as well. They're always fun. Yeah.
What makes the albatross so special apart from their large wingspan?
I mean, their whole life cycle is incredible. I just love that once they leave the nest, they don't touch land basically for 5 years while they circumnavigate the globe to come back. And then they come back and the landing is just hilarious because they haven't touched land in 5 years, so they come in and they just crash down on the ground. But yeah, I think they're the most fascinating massive birds you've ever seen.
Do you think that's what your mother's going to expect after your travels around the world since you got kicked out of the nest?
Yeah, I'll just come crashing through the door again. That would be about right. Yeah.
Get ready, Joanne. It's going to be a crash landing. It'll be a lot of fun. Now, today's news out of the National Party's recent upheaval is the announcement of the reshuffle of Todd Muller's caucus cabinet, and it is Hamilton East MP David Bennett who has risen to the top as our spokesman for agriculture. We're going to have a lot of fun over the next 4 months going into this election. So I'm just wanting to bring you up to speed. Rangitata MP Andrew Falloon has been named David's associate agriculture and biosecurity spokesman. The pork industry will be stoked with that. Taranaki King Country MP Barbara Kruger is the party's rural community spokeswoman, a fantastic advocate for rural communities. Congratulations, Barbara. And a good mate of mine, old Hamish Walker there at Clutha Southland MP, is spokesman for forestry and land information, and also note associate tourism as well, which he is extremely passionate about. David joins us now. Good evening, sir, and congratulations.
Thank you, Sarah. Great to be on your show, and appreciate the warm welcome. Thank you.
No worries. As I was saying there earlier, it won't be our last rodeo together going into this election. We've got certainly a lot of issues to cover. David, this isn't you've been around for a very, very long time now, and Hamilton's first minister there in 33 years when you came in, but also you've been sitting in a hot seat of the Primary Production Select Committee for many years. So you were right up to scratch on the key issues within the primary sector.
Yeah, we've been very fortunate in the primary production to have a great team of national MPs there, I mentioned, and they do vital work there. But we've had some really big issues that have come through in recent months, and the key one would be the dairy reforms, where basically there's been a cross-party agreement on that, which is amazing to see in Parliament, and we've basically rewritten what the legislation was that came to the committee and come up with something that is very much welcomed by the dairy sector. And I think that shows how that select committee can actually achieve a lot working together, but also working for the best interests of our rural communities.
For those of you who are watching, that is the Dairy Industry Restructuring Act, which enables Fonterra to not have to pick up everybody's milk, and a very vital change to an act. Of course, another one that we've sort of closely worked on together, David, is of course M. bovis and the handling of that. I see there today there's some developments in a more accurate test. How are you feeling about it, and should you be elected as Minister for Agriculture, what would be the first thing you would do around the eradication program?
Well, the first thing you'd want to do if you would be getting an update of the actual MPI's approach and how they're going, and what they might not be saying publicly, but internally about what they think's going on. That's another issue that basically the government has come to an agreement with the industry around, and government funding that's been involved in that, and there's a lot of industry funding as well. It's something that is a bit of a wake-up call for the primary production sector, and a bit like the virus now through our country, it just shows how vulnerable we can be to something like that, and you never know what's around. And so we need to have probably the best processes around biosecurity and that to make sure that things like this don't eventuate, and then we need to actually have really strong structures around how you deal with them when they do come about. And just to make sure that the response times are quick, that we've got the testing, that we've also got, especially in the case of bovis, that we've got that tracing of animals, so we know where the animals have come from, where they've gone, and are then able to really take action. So there's a lot of lessons that we learn, and it's something that we've just got to be mindful that can always happen when you're in an industry like we are. And you've got to be able to.
Just having a little bit of trouble there, but we are still making it, David, so it is good. Now, David, you've been, as I said, around a long time, so has Minister O'Connor. What would you be most critical of him in his term as Minister of Agriculture?
Well, Damien and I know each other just... say one thing, that when we did that dairy reform just a few months ago, Damien and I worked closely together on that. So I'm not critical of him in that way. at all. I think that we actually got a good result between the two of us as chair of the committee and him as minister. And so I think that, he's done some good work in his role as well. So I don't want to be overly critical of him at this stage. It's I understand what he's doing and what he's trying to do, but he's also in a party that doesn't value agriculture and the primary industries, I feel. And that's his biggest problem. And, he may be there, but he hasn't been able to get that response from the Labour New Zealand First government that actually gives him the support to do what's needed for the industry.
David, I know there'll be a lot of people listening that are really looking for a very strong minister in agriculture in opposition, spokesman for agriculture in opposition, that does challenge our minister on a lot of these pending draft policies that are creating so much uncertainty for our farming community. Will you hold him to account?
Oh, certainly, and that's our job. And, as you say, there's massive issues coming around water, the environmental issues that farmers are going to face. There's issues around probably taxation that farmers will face as well. So, there's a lot of uncertainty there, and you combine that with an environment where, you've had droughts and people have been struggling through that period of time. They just don't want that uncertainty. They want to know what their business plan is going to be and what they have to do. So certainly we're going to take into account, and there's some key areas there around water, the environment, and taxation that farmers just are uncertain of at this time. And the minister either knows what he's doing and doesn't want to tell us, or he doesn't know himself. And we'll soon find that out.
Okay, so Todd Muller did the right thing. He won the hearts and minds of rural New Zealand by going on a road trip. Will you do the same?
Yep. Well, we intend to do as much as we can as well, yes. The difficulty is that we've only got 4 months to the election, and so that's a different kettle of fish to what we've had. So we'll try and get out there as much as we can and get into the community and listen and hear what people are saying and advocate for their best interests. So, yeah, we want to be there as an advocate and someone supporting communities, and especially our rural communities.
I just want to lastly say your support of your associate spokesman, Andrew Falloon. I've had the pleasure of meeting him. He's a lovely man from down this way. You've had a lot to do with Andrew over the time and confident in his ability as well.
Oh, certainly. And as you say, Andrew's a new MP that's got tremendous potential and future ahead of him, as does Hamish and as well. And then you've in a way that have more experienced MPs than Lawrence Ewell that have got a great sense of their community. So we're very lucky. And then you go up to the north and you've got people like Matt King that's very energy as well. So we've got the rural MPs. They know the issues that need to be advocated for. They're strong advocates for their communities and also for the rural sector in general. So I think we're extremely well placed with a team that can take it to the government and actually get some wins for our agricultural sector and then deliver a future for them. And it's important that we have a vision too. That we're out there with a concept of what we want to see, and we're not just being reactive and dealing with issues of the government of the day, because really agriculture's got such a key role to play in New Zealand's future that we need to support it by making it the most successful it can be, rather than just having to deal with the issues of the day.
An issue of the day that one of our viewers would very much like to pass on to you. Hamish Cave would like to see you and Todd urgently in Hawke's Bay and would like to know when you're going to visit the region.
Well, that would be we appreciate that, and that's a great suggestion. So I'll be feeding that into our team, just meeting with the team, and we'll certainly want to get over there. They're experiencing a terrible drought there. It seems like they haven't had the rainfall that's necessary at the moment, and they've issues with getting their stock off their properties as well. The Waikato had an earlier drought early in the year, but at least we got some rainfall in the autumn to quench that. But the Hawke's Bay is going through a very difficult time. Just wanted to say to all those farming families out there that we're working with you and we want to be there supporting you, and we want to get out there and be there so that you got that support, and you've got MPs and a government in opposition that is willing to listen and wants to be there to support you, because we realise what a vital role you play in that community, but also the country's future.
What a lovely way to end. Thank you so much. It is our new spokesman for agriculture for the National Party, David Bennett, there after today's announcement. Now, talking Hawke's Bay and that we are walking beside you, Sarah's Country is walking right beside you to bring some comedic relief tomorrow night in a very special edition, proudly brought to you by the great people at Balance Agri-Nutrients. If you missed the interview there with Hayden Eade last week about how the concept came about, we will be bringing to the show T Radar, who will be emceeing a special section of the show with the funniest people around New Zealand. Comedians Justine Smith, Paul Ego and Gary McCormack. All that tomorrow here on Sarah's Country on a very special edition to bring some laughter to our farmers that are struggling around the country. And can I also acknowledge, we know it is not just Hawke's Bay, it is certainly in so many other parts around the country, and in particular even parts of the South Island as well. So this is for you nationwide. From 7 o'clock tomorrow, we will be laughing together and celebrating the humanity that we have and such richness in our rural communities. Now, up next, to close the show, we still have one more guest. It's the fantastic CEO of Potatoes New Zealand on the issue of the dumping of fries from Europe. All that up soon.
This is Sarah's Country.
Balance has its own team of innovation specialists. It's our job to lead the way, working with some of the most cutting-edge science and research. We've got partnerships with some of the best suppliers in the world, so our farmers get the very best products for New Zealand farms.
And in every region across the country, the conditions are very different, and farmers and growers' needs are too.
That's why we're always looking for solutions that are just right, like here at our Huntly Service Centre.
And here in Canterbury, we've got a self-service silo, so I can pick up fat when it suits me.
And here in Morrinsville, we've got a world-class mill. That means that we can safely deliver our customers with the freshest, highest quality feed and minerals.
It's about putting the customer first, because that's what drives our business.
We've been focusing on faster turnaround of orders. We've got to get the right products to the right places at the right times.
Here in Taranaki, we've got New Zealand's only urea manufacturing plant. It's where we create our premium sustained fertiliser.
We're supplying nationwide and working locally. By getting to know you and what you want to achieve, we can help you get there.
And with the new My Balance platform, Balance has put my farm at my fingertips.
In fact, we offer support in all sorts of ways, sharing the best nutrition practice with farming families across the country. Whether we're talking about animal health, farm productivity,
or looking after our natural environment, sustainability underpins everything we do. We use our local expertise and the latest tools to help farmers and growers navigate the changing regulations, so you can leave your farm in great shape for the future.
And we can be really accurate, avoiding areas like wetlands and waterways with our award-winning Spread Smart tech. It makes the job far safer, more efficient, and gives you the best results.
When you've got access to that kind of know-how, you've got the support you need to make sure you're farming sustainably. It's that kind of thinking that'll keep us going for generations to come.
Together creating the best soil and feed on earth.
Now, as a trading nation, New Zealand generally supports the concept of globalisation, but sometimes it discovers it does not always promote our best interests. Potatoes New Zealand has sounded the alarm over an example of the latter, with the imminent arrival of dumped frozen chips from Europe on our shores, grown with the help of generous subsidies that we don't have here at home. The government might not be able to provide an overnight solution as the industry wants. There will have to be an investigation and proof to the World Trade Organization that there is a risk to the New Zealand industry. It's become very heated, and joining us now to discuss is CEO for Potatoes New Zealand, Chris Claridge. Chris, rules-based international trade has generally benefited New Zealand. Do we actually have the ability to flex our muscles as a little country at the bottom of the world?
Oh, good evening, Sarah. And the answer is absolutely, particularly when what we have here is the potato industry in Europe is not, in our view, playing by the rules. This is not a level playing field. So what's happened is there's direct subsidisation by the EU of potato growers, and they're paying potato growers in Europe money, around about 50 euros a tonne. And what that means is the processors can buy or be given for free potatoes to turn into frozen fries. And they've created a mountain of frozen fries, some 2.6 million tonnes, and they've got to go somewhere. And as we understand it, they're heading our way.
So, what is the flow-on effect for our New Zealand growers? As one, of course, is price, but long-term security of supply.
Yeah, long-term security is the really important thing here, because what happens is that we get a reduction in planting. The processors here could be forced out of business, and what happens is currently around about over 50% of all potatoes grown in New Zealand turned into fries. So if we lose that segment of our productive base, that means we lose scale of economy. Currently, we're a net exporter of potatoes, so we don't need to import them. And if we lose our ability to operate at scale, we then become reliant on imported foodstuffs, and in this case, imported frozen fries, which long-term would be devastating for our industry.
I mean, we certainly learnt that, and we're watching that evolve in the pork industry, Chris. And we actually still believe that we're so safe for food security here in New Zealand, but that's not the case.
Yeah, and this is the big lesson here. And I just want to go back to your very first question: is what can we do about it? So we have domestic legislation that we can enact, and it's been around since 1988. It's the Dumping and Countervailing Duties Act, which was subsequently amended, I think, 2014. Now, what that does is it empowers industries here to seek from the government investigation into potential dumping of discounted or simply a wall or volume of product, and also subsidised imported product. The difficulty we've got is the time frame that takes to happen. It can take up to 6 months for that to occur. So what the government, in a sense, is asking us to do is, well, wait until they arrive here, wait till they get to the port wharf, wait till they cause problems in your industry, then apply to a tariff. And we're saying, well, look, that simply doesn't work. That just doesn't make any sense. We know they're on their way. Other countries are equally concerned. We now hear both the UK and the US are also considering putting in tariffs, and it's just we can move at speed if we need to, and that's what we're seeking from the government is let's move with a little bit more urgency than taking 6 months to consider an application for a tariff.
Is it possible to apply for temporary floating tariffs because of the nature of the global situation?
Absolutely, and there's what they call we've got what they call fair trade safeguard measures, and I'm getting a crash course of international regulations regarding international goods, so please bear with me here. But we've got domestic legislation that we can utilise. The issue we've got is the process is inordinately slow and doesn't move at a speed fast enough to protect the industry. And this is what happened, I think, in the pork industry, was they essentially had to wait until the pork arrived, until it wiped out their local production, then they applied for protection. That makes absolutely no sense. And to give you some context here, Sarah, we've got 2.6 million tonnes to be exact of surplus fries looking for a home. That's 20 times our annual production. So it's not going to take much of that small mountain of frozen fries to get to New Zealand to start causing havoc.
Wow. And that's just that can I just say, ass about face situation, whereby instead of preventing the crime, you allow someone to smash in your car and apply for damages afterwards. So it's, yes, no, I'm frustrated by this, Chris.
Yeah, Sarah, I share that frustration. And this is what we're saying. And to be fair, what New Zealand's facing is the same as the Australians and the South Africans. And the Australian government said the same thing to their Australian producers. We've just had them on the phone this afternoon having a discussion on how to manage this whole thing. And give you some idea of what's actually happening, we have information about a factory in England being rung up and told they've got by a supplier out of Europe saying, we'll supply you 200,000 metric tons of potatoes free. Now that's what we're up against here, to give you some idea of the real risk to this industry. But I want to signal to all listeners that this is just the start. We can see this happening in other sectors. Now, if we don't move quickly and fast and efficiently to solve the problem, we will be the first. And make no bones about it, there will be more. The ripple of COVID-19 is being felt throughout the world and throughout all sectors of industry.
When will we learn from history, Chris, and stop being so short-minded in this industry? Thank you so much for being so strong on this point and making us all so very aware of our instability and our food security here at home, let alone the trade barriers that we face around the world. That's CEO for Potatoes New Zealand, Chris Claridge, on always a bright mind, not only on that, but on all things thought leading in our industry. Now, of course, that is all we have time for tonight. I wish I could yarn away for another hour. Joel, should we make this show longer?
Please no. I want to go home.
Please no. If you want to get in touch with the show, you know the drill. Sarah@periamedia.com. Flick me an email or slip into my inbox on social media. If you missed the show, if you're watching live, make sure you catch us on podcast. If you're listening on podcast and you want to watch us live Monday through Thursday, head to sarahperium.com or farmersweekly.co.nz and click on the Sarah's Country tab. I think that we live in the best part of the world, and we have so much to offer, not only around the world, but here at home. But by God, we need to pay attention to what's going on and seriously speak up and do something about it. You've been watching Sarah's Country. Good night.